Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Schneider, senior editor for Variety. Welcome back to the streaming room. Everyone just watched the first episode of Dispatches from Elsewhere. And now I've got the stars and also the creator, executive producer of the AMC show right here with me. And he's even sporting quite the quarantine beard. First off, ladies and gentlemen, it is Mr. Jason Segel.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome. Not
Thanks
only
for joining us. Hi.
not only the creator and executive producer, but also one of the stars of this show. He plays Peter, of course. Next up, she plays Simone on the show. Eve Lindley, welcome from cyberspace. Welcome, and looking cool in his shades, and hopefully he'll break out the flute a little bit later. He plays Fred Wynn on the show. André Benjamin.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
So thank you all from joining from beyond. In some ways, this show is kind of the perfect show to be watching right now. As we're all kind of in quarantine and at home, it's such a joyous show. It takes us all over the place. It's almost like a travel log. We see a lot of Philadelphia. There's just a lot going on. And for those of us who are kind of sitting at home and looking for adventure, you kind of give it to us, Jason. But let's back up. Let's talk about the origins of Dispatches. How did this show all sort of come about? Give me the whole history.
Yeah, well, give it in brief because it was a really long process. It started in 2013 for me. I was getting ready to do a movie called End of the Tour, and I was really scared about it, so I wasn't watching other actors because I thought I would get psyched out. I was just watching documentaries and reading a lot of David Foster Wallace, which is who the movie was about. And so I was thinking about all these themes about existential crisis and this really interesting nonlinear storytelling, and I saw this documentary called The Institute by Spencer McCall and Jeff Hull. Jeff Hull had created this immersive art experience in San Francisco, one of the first of its kind, that was really like the exact opposite of Fight Club. People who felt like there should be more were getting together in the secrecy of night, but instead of beating each other up, they were making magic. It was like art as an act of defiance. And I thought, for the first time in a long time, I need to write about this. And so I hunted down the rights. Jeff Hull made me do the induction, which you see in the pilot, in order to get the rights. And I got it, and I set off to writing it. And, boy, 7 years later, to have it all kind of coming to its end, to see it embodied by these, these actors are the best I've ever seen. I just feel really, really lucky for how it turned out.
Well, let's go through everyone and sort of how you got involved. So Eve, how did you get involved? How did you first learn about this project?
I just had an audition, and I went in and I did the audition, and then I read with Jason twice, and yeah, I was really attached to the source material from the very beginning.
Yeah. I mean, this is unlike a lot that we've seen out there. What did you make of it? And sort of, realizing quickly how unique this show was going to be, that must have been also kind of I want to be a part of this sort of moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it sort of there was like a certain nostalgia to it that kind of harkened back to the stuff that I watched growing up that I really loved. And there was a lot of references in it that I really identified with. Not just in the pilot, but later on in the series.
And Andre, how about you? How did you get involved with this?
I read the first episode, and then after reading the first episode, I was kind of hooked because I wanted to know, well, what's next? And I didn't know about the actual game that took place in San Francisco, so I'm reading it just like as a story, as first episode script. And I was just intrigued by it, and I got on the phone with Jason, and we had a really good conversation. A conversation that was, personal and about life, which is we were in a similar place, I felt like. And I felt like it was time for me to, to just step up and do more. And I felt like this was a great thing, and I wanted to support where Jason was because I felt like we were in a similar place. So after we spoke, I was like, hey, I'm all in. And that's how I got involved. But first, reading the script before I even talk to Jason.
Yeah. Well, Jason, let's talk about this cast because, of course, Andre and Eve, but then we've got Sally Field. Sally, mother effing Field.
Yes.
Like, how about that?
Yeah.
And Richard E. Grant. I mean, this is a cast. Talk about bringing all these people together and how you managed to get such a glorious cast for your show.
Yeah, the cast is just unbelievable. I think that, first of all, I got really lucky. Second of all, I begged. And I think the other thing that I tried to set out, which really came true, is that this was going to be a platform for all of us to kind of explore some things that we want to say on screen. That was my goal, is that I had a hunch from Eve's audition that she had some things as an artist that she could express in this show. Felt the same after my conversation with Andre, that given the space on screen, there were things that Andre would want to explore. And the same as like Sally Field's episode, her particular episode, episode 3, is this conversation with her younger self. And I wrote it for my mom. It's, she is of a certain age as well. And I just said to everybody, my only goal is to provide a platform for you to do your best work. And I meant it. And I guess maybe coming from another actor, that meant something. But honestly, I just got really, really lucky.
Yeah, I do feel like
that's the same way.
That Sally Field's going to go places. I think you've really found quite a discovery in her. So,
well, the other thing I think the show has going for it is, as a reader of a lot of material also, like the things that people say like, oh, this one's really different. And it's very often not that different. It's like, it's some iteration of something that was popular the year before with like some twist, and one thing I can say for Dispatches is it is wholly and uniquely itself. Like it, not like it, it is just bravely and unembarrassed to be its own thing. And that's pretty cool.
Well, and this industry, knowing this industry, sometimes people are scared of those kind of things. It's more like, why isn't this more like Tiger King or Masked Singer, right? So talk about the sort of the journey. You mentioned this was sort of a long journey in pitching this and getting this out here and getting a network like AMC to trust you and say, okay, this is your vision, Jason. We trust in you. Let's do this.
Yeah. Well, I started writing it as a movie because that's the only. I've never written television before, and I know how to write a movie, and it's very contained. Something kept nagging at me about taking a three-dimensional interactive work of art and turning it into something you're just supposed to sit and watch. It felt like reductive. I didn't understand artistically like the point of doing that, which was really bugging me. And then the other thing that I was having a hard time with was that this experience, the whole thing that was important about it was that it was interactive. And to take that element away felt wrong. And so then what hit me was that if I did this on television weekly and focused on the thing that's interesting to me, which is who pulls a flyer and why, then I could make this about people instead of a fictional scavenger hunt. I could make it about existential crisis. And I could also have these weeks in between the episodes where people could interact with each other. And they could talk about their theories, and they could talk about what they liked and didn't like how we came up watching TV, It was interactive. And so that was how it became a TV show. And honestly, AMC was so brave and generous to say, we're going to let you do this. That was not the overwhelming reaction when I took it out.
Yeah.
Just to be totally honest, like a lot of people were like, what are you talking about? And AMC understood what I was trying to say, and believed in me and has believed in the project from beginning to end. Like I couldn't imagine anyone more supportive than what they've been. I think the other thing the show had going for it is that it is so weird that it was very hard to like give notes on.
Yeah.
Because like, how do you even offer a suggestion? You have to kind of take this leap of faith that the people making the show knew what they were doing. And like that leap of faith kept having to happen over and over again because there's a lot of really interesting stuff that happens in the show.
Well, even Andre, talk about sort of what those conversations were like, even on set. Luckily Jason's right there to sort of work with you and workshop on where your characters are going and where the story is going. What was that experience like in sort of working with Jason and together sort of exploring this story?
Well, for me, it was a really easy process. Jason is easygoing. He's kind of straight to the point. He told me exactly what he was looking for. I was, surprised because for me, I don't do a lot of screen work. So, I was kind of nervous going into it because I hadn't done work in a while. So I'm always kind of looking to please, to please the director. And I got a few notes which were really helpful for me. And one in particular that kind of just threw me back, that was a challenge, but I loved it because of Fredwyn's intensity. Jason said, like a few days before we started to shoot, it was like, I never want you to smile. Never want you to smile. And I'm such a smiley person, naturally. It was like, okay, that little thing to me, it made Fredwyn be a completely different person, because if he smiled and said some of the things, it would, I think it would be completely different. So I think just that sometimes little bitty screw turns, are important. So it helped with the intensity of Fredwyn, and so it was those kind of easy notes that were really important for me.
Yeah, and what did you make of Fredwyn? I mean, because you're right, immediately you know what his dynamic is in this group, and you're right, it's partly because you don't see him smile, and then as you learn more about him, yeah, he's an intense guy. What was sort of your take on Fredwyn?
He's always on, I've met people in the world this way. I've read about people in the world this way. Even now, with what's going on in the world with, COVID and all this kind of stuff, I get so many texts and emails like conspiracy theorists emails and texts about, like someone said Frank Ocean started all of it. I was like, what?
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, he said it's the weirdest one to get out of having to do Coachella. That's what it was. I was like, okay, nice. But what I'm saying is there are a lot of people like Fredwyn in the world that, they have all these conspiracy theories and they believe in these kind of, wild things. And so it was kind of easy for me to pull from that. And a lot of times on screen, I'm pulling from people that I know. I'm kind of just, pulling little things that I see them do and kind of just, make it into like a meat patty of another person.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to have to offline dive deeper into this Frank Ocean theory, because I think you may have ripped the lid off something. I don't know what it is, but you ripped the lid off something. Well, Eve, let's talk about Simone. Early on in the series, we really get to learn a lot about Simone and really get to sort of explore her character. Talk about that and sort of playing such a meaty role, such a deep role. How did you sort of prepare for that, and what were sort of some of the exercises you went through in planning to play Simone?
Well, I remember at one of my first callbacks with Jason, he said, that Simone was starts out as a manic pixie dream girl, and then she, we get to know her and we realize that she's actually much deeper than that. So one of the things that I kind of put together was that I think Simone had seen all of the manic pixie dream girls, and she's seen all of the movies, and she sort of crafted herself out of these women that she admired and followed and identified with. So I watched a lot of classic manic pixie dream girl stuff, and then I thought a lot about how you would subvert it and how you would make it more interesting. And there's one moment when Peter and Simone are on the bus, and she asks him what kind of music he likes, and he says Les Mis.
Right, it's the only CD he has. Yeah.
And I feel like Manic Pixie Dream Girls and music are like, you know, that's all they ever talk about in you know, they're always like, they have really good taste in music and they like are kind of snobby about it. So I was like, I think she thinks it's actually really cool that he only listens to Les Mis. Like, that's a really bold choice. And like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So like, that conversation, you know, how, what that meant for them.
Yeah, the look on her face at the moment, and of course your face playing Simone, just like this sly little smile. I mean, there's a lot. One of the joys is sort of watching, you know, when you guys split up into your partnerships, you know, watching Simone and Peter together, and then of course watching André Benjamin and Sally Field interact together. I mean, Jason,
Yes.
like, I think the world has you to thank for seeing André Benjamin and Sally Field together, working so closely.
It's the coolest thing I've ever done in
The
my life.
odd couple. That's my running partner.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I was kind of, every once in a while I wonder, like, how much did Sally Field know about you, Andre? Was she familiar with your music work, or was this sort of like a brand new experience for her in getting to know you?
No, I don't think she knew a lot. I think her children may have known, but it was kind of like a new experience for both of us. But my mom, you know, she used to watch Sally Field shows growing up, so, you know, I was familiar with Sally, of course. But she really blew me away because she is so sharp and like on it all the time. And she's such a professional, and I learned a lot from her because she told me how to work, you know, and then like she has the most integrity for a person on screen. I've seen her argue small things that in the end make total sense, you know, and argue them down like bulldog argue them down and be like, hey, wow, this is Sally going you know, like she's going off, but then in the end it's like, okay, my character would never do that. I'm like, okay, I'm learning, you know. So she's she's all for the work. She's totally for the work. I love her.
A little bit of a master class. That's really cool.
Oh, for
that's
sure.
Really cool.
Sitting right next to her, and she's sharp though. She's totally sharp.
I wanted to believe that Sally came to you at one point. She's like, so I got my copy of Stankonia at home, and I had a question. Jason, Eve actually brought up the bus scene, and what's interesting to me, what I love too about that, very subtle, is the fact that that's like an old 70s bus, and you know, it's sort of, you know, talk about sort of the old spirit of the show, but you know, the fact that it's set in modern times, and the whole look and feel of the show. Give me an idea of what you were going for.
Yeah, sure. I wanted the show to feel kind of lost in time. I wanted the whole experience to feel very universal. And so I just feel like there is this, there's this sort of nondescript idea of like the past where you can do like it's like the indiscriminate past, and you can do this blending of styles from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And it's all just this sense of, you know, it gives a little bit of sense of that you're within a story. I think that was part of what I wanted the show to feel like. It's one of the things like I really like about Wes Anderson movies, for example, or Hal Ashby movies, you know, I feel like is the originator of this idea, is just that each of them feel like a little music box that you've taken off the shelf and opened it up, and then the story is revealed. They're set in reality, but they feel a little bit presentational. And so I guess I wanted the show to feel like that, which without getting too much into the finale is sort of explained by this sort of twist that we have at the end. You know, that there has been a story element to all of this.
Well, without sort of spoiling it or giving it away, I mean, talk a little bit about what the show meant to you personally, you know, and how the you know, finale sort of reflects that. What this meant to you personally in doing this, telling this story.
Yeah. Well, the show is built on this premise, this sort of underlying thesis that really we are all much more similar than we're being told to believe. daily. And that if we just opened ourselves up to one another, that would be revealed. And all it takes is just a little act of faith to say, this is who I am. And you will be met by your fellows who will say, hey, I'm just like that. I'm scared of the same thing, you know? And so at one point in conceiving the show, I thought to myself, do you actually believe that? Or are you just, you know, being idealistic or whatever? Are you going to put your money where your mouth is? And that is sort of what leads us to the finale, is this exercise in, hey, the premise of our show is that if you reveal yourselves to one another, you will be met with understanding and compassion. I'll start with me. That was the idea.
And how about even Andre? What was sort of your takeaway from the show and being a part of this story?
Well, for me, it was like the community is the strongest part of it. I think, especially coming from a Fredwin place, and even in my personal life, I'm an only child, so I've been pretty much by myself, you know, and, you know, have this kind of contained world. But it takes everybody, you know. It takes everybody, and I think that's what we learn, you know, by the end, that, you know, the community that's your support. You know, when you're out on the island by yourself, yeah, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it all. But I think it's the community that's important. So that's what I got most about it. You need people. People need people. Yeah. That's it. As simple as that.
Yeah. And Eve, how about you?
Geez, I mean, you said masterclass earlier, and like, I mean, I got so much out of this, just watching these like amazing artists work and learning about my craft. And I think when it's your first time being a series regular, it's like you can prep and prep and prep and prep, and it's not really until you get there, you're like asked to ride a bike with Sally Field and Jason Segel that you know. So yeah, I think it was just like, for me, it was just like learning rapidly and trying to take in as much as I can, and, you know, asking questions, and then also like feeling a little bit worthy, you know, like feeling like, oh, like I did that.
Yeah,
that's right.
You sure did
it. So
yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of folks have said, and maybe, Jason, you can sort of talk about this, that Eve is a real find, you know, just a fresh face, you know, and just kills it. And also a very important character, very important symbol, especially to the world right now. You know, talk a little bit more about that.
My goal with these 4 characters was to paint 4 opposite walls, seemingly entirely different people, and slowly and ask you at the beginning of the show as a viewer to identify with one of them. You're probably going to pick one and say, that's me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And by the end of the series, the goal was that you realize that you are all of them, that these people who all seem so different are all so similar. And I think the moment that I was acting with Eve, I felt like I just really identified with her, if that makes sense. I identified with her determination. I identified with her love of her craft. And I identified with someone who is trying to figure out how to navigate this world and be figuring out who you are at the same time. And that's something that I've dealt with in various iterations my whole life. And I'm like, oh, here's someone going through something that I can really relate to that is seemingly very different than my circumstances, and yet somehow I feel exactly the same as her. And that was, I mean, that's like literally the point of what I was looking for, and Eve was able to do it seamlessly. Yeah. And then there was one, I've told this story before, but there was one moment where I was like, it's Eve. It's Eve. And we were doing this scene, and, you know, I wrote the stuff, so I have a picture of what it's going to be like when we're doing the scenes. And kind of as a director, I'm like trying to push us towards how I've pictured it, you know, especially because I'm new. Like, I'm like, let's try to get this as close to what I pictured as possible, at least at first. And Eve was doing it differently than how I had pictured. And I was about to give a direction, and I like stopped myself, and I was like, no, I think this is better. Like in my mind, I'm like, I think what she's doing is better. And then I said to Eve, God, Eve, she's so much more complicated than I pictured. And then Eve looked up at me and said, she always is, Jason. And I was like, oh, it's her.
Yeah.
Eve is going to teach me something during this process.
Yeah.
Not vice versa. And believe me, Andre is sitting there too. The exact same with Andre and certainly Sally. You know, like I surrounded myself with people that I was going to learn from.
Well, on that note, Jason, a nice reminder to everyone, if you haven't watched Dispatches from Elsewhere just yet, it's available now. Stream it wherever you are. Andre, play us out, man.
Yes.
Play us out.
Oh, no.
All right. Well,
we save it for elsewhere. We save it for the
exactly. So suddenly we have to pay some sort of rights fee. It's we probably shouldn't go there. But thank you so much, Eve, Andre, and of course Jason. Congratulations.
No, thank you, Michael. Thank you. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
And best to all of you. Hopefully we'll eventually be outside of these Zoom boxes and in person once again. So
we will.
Looking forward to it.
Best to all of you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, same to you, man.
you.
Thank you.